The morning sun rose over the small farming town of Cedar Falls like it had for 100 years before. The golden light touched the wheat fields first, then the corn, then the old red barns that stood like tired soldiers watching over the land. John Miller stood on his porch with a cup of coffee in his hand. He was 62 years old. His hands were rough from decades of work. His back hurt most mornings, but he loved this land more than anything in the world. His wife Martha came out to stand beside him. She wore her old blue dress and her gray hair was tied back in a simple bun. They had been married for 40 years. They had raised 3 children on this farm. 2 of them had moved to the city. Only their youngest son, Tommy, stayed to help with the work. "Going to be a good day for the harvest," John said. Martha nodded. She looked at the sky. It was clear and blue, not a cloud anywhere. But something felt strange to her. The birds were not singing. The dogs were hiding under the porch. Even the old rooster had not made his morning call. "Something is wrong," she said quietly. John looked at her. He had learned long ago to trust his wife's feelings. She had a sense for things that he did not understand. He looked around the farm. Everything seemed normal. The cows were in the field. The chickens were in their coop. But yes, the silence was strange. Then they heard it. A low sound, like thunder but not thunder. It came from above. They both looked up at the sky. What they saw made John drop his coffee cup. It shattered on the wooden porch, but neither of them noticed. Ships, huge ships. They were black against the blue sky. They moved slowly, blocking out the sun. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They made no sound except for that low rumbling that shook the ground beneath their feet. "Lord have mercy," Martha whispered. All across Cedar Falls, people stopped what they were doing and looked up. Bill Henderson was feeding his pigs when he saw the ships. Sarah Chen was opening her small grocery store when the shadow fell over Main Street. Old Tom Walker was sitting in his usual spot outside the barber shop when the sky went dark. The ships began to land in the fields outside of town. They crushed the wheat and the corn under their massive weight. Dust and dirt flew up in great clouds. The ground shook so hard that windows broke and buildings cracked. John grabbed Martha's hand. "Get inside," he said. "Get the gun." He did not know what good a hunting rifle would do against ships that big, but it was all he had. He had fought in a war long ago when he was young. He still remembered how to shoot. He still remembered how to fight. Tommy came running from the barn. He was 25 years old, strong and fast. His face was pale with fear. "Dad, what is happening?" "I don't know, son, but we need to be ready." The ships opened. Great doors lowered to the ground like drawbridges, and then they came out. The creatures were tall, much taller than humans. They had gray skin that looked like stone. They had 4 arms and 2 legs. Their heads were shaped like triangles with 3 eyes that glowed red. They wore black armor and carried weapons that looked like nothing John had ever seen. They moved in perfect lines, hundreds of them, then thousands. They marched out of their ships and into the fields of Cedar Falls. They did not speak. They did not make any sound at all. They just marched. John ran inside and grabbed his rifle. It was an old Winchester that had belonged to his father. He loaded it with shaking hands. Martha was already on the phone trying to call for help, but the phone was dead. No signal, no connection. "The TV," Tommy said. "Try the TV." They turned it on, static. Every channel was static. Then suddenly a face appeared. But it was not a human face. It was one of the creatures. Its 3 red eyes stared out from the screen. "People of this world," it said. Its voice was deep and cold. "We are the Krath. Your planet now belongs to us. Do not resist. Resistance will bring death. Surrender and you will be allowed to serve." The message repeated, over and over, the same words in the same cold voice. John looked at his wife. He looked at his son. Then he looked out the window at the creatures marching through his fields, his wheat, his corn, 40 years of work being crushed under alien feet. Something changed in his eyes. Martha had seen that look before. She had seen it when the bank tried to take their farm during the bad years. She had seen it when anyone threatened their family. It was the look of a man who would not give up, a man who would not surrender. "They want us to serve," John said quietly. "They want to take our land, our home." He checked his rifle one more time. He looked at Tommy. "Son, you remember what I taught you about shooting?" Tommy nodded. His fear was still there, but something else was growing. Something harder, something stronger. "Go get the other rifles, all of them, and the ammunition." Martha grabbed John's arm. "John, what are you thinking? You can't fight those things with hunting rifles." John looked at her with love in his eyes. Love and determination. "Martha, I've been a farmer all my life. My father was a farmer. His father was a farmer. We didn't build this land by giving up when things got hard. We didn't survive droughts and floods and banks trying to take everything by surrendering." He pointed out the window. "Those things out there, they think we're just going to roll over. They think we're going to serve them, but they don't know us. They don't know what we're made of." He walked to the door. "I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees." All across Cedar Falls, similar conversations were happening. Bill Henderson loaded his shotgun. Sarah Chen found the old pistol her father had given her. Old Tom Walker, who was 78 years old and had fought in 2 wars, got his rifle down from above the fireplace. They did not have a plan. They did not have leaders. They did not have any real chance against an army of alien invaders, but they had something else. They had the stubborn spirit of people who had worked the land for generations, people who had never backed down from a fight in their lives. The Krath did not understand this. In all their conquests across the galaxy, they had never faced creatures like humans. They had conquered 100 worlds. They had enslaved 1,000 species. Every single one had surrendered when they saw the power of the Krath fleet. The commander of the invasion force was named Vextor. He stood on the bridge of his ship and watched his troops spread out across the small town. This was a simple mission. A backward planet with primitive technology. No real military to speak of. Just farmers and shopkeepers. It would be conquered in a day. He could not have been more wrong. The first shot came from John Miller's rifle. A Krath soldier was walking through his cornfield when the bullet hit it in the neck, right between the armor plates. The creature fell without a sound. Its companions stopped and looked around in confusion. John fired again. Another one fell. The Krath did not know where the shots were coming from. Their technology could not detect the primitive weapons. Their armor was designed to stop energy weapons, not small pieces of metal moving very fast. Tommy fired from the upstairs window. Another alien fell. Across town, more shots rang out. Bill Henderson fired his shotgun at a group of Krath walking past his farm. The spray of pellets hit 3 of them. 2 fell. The third stumbled and fell a moment later. Sarah Chen shot an alien that was trying to enter her store. Old Tom Walker proved that his aim was still perfect by shooting 2 aliens from 300 yards away. The Krath were confused. They had never faced resistance like this. They did not know how to respond to weapons they had never seen before. Their commanders ordered them to find the attackers and destroy them. But the humans were hidden in their homes, in their barns, behind walls and trees and anything else they could find. Vextor watched from his ship. His 3 eyes narrowed with what might have been surprise, or perhaps anger. It was hard to tell with the Krath. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Commander, the primitives are fighting back. They are using some kind of projectile weapons. Our soldiers are taking casualties." "Impossible. They have no military. Our scans showed no organized resistance." "There is no organized resistance, Commander. They are farmers, civilians, but they are all fighting." Vextor could not understand this. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen civilians fight. Soldiers fought, warriors fought, but farmers, shopkeepers, old men and women, this was not how things worked. Increase our forces, crush this resistance. More craft poured out of the ships. They spread through the town with their weapons ready. They began burning buildings. They began killing anyone they could find. But the humans did not stop fighting. If anything, they fought harder. John Miller's barn was on fire. He could see the flames from his window. 40 years of work. Memories of his children playing in the hay, all of it burning. But he did not cry. He did not give up. He kept shooting. Martha was beside him now. She had the old shotgun that they kept for coyotes. She had never shot at anything except animals. But today she shot at aliens. And she did not miss. "Cover me," John said. "I need to get to the truck." "What are you planning?" John smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Remember that fertilizer in the shed, the stuff we use for the fields?" Martha's eyes went wide. She knew exactly what he was thinking. "John, that's crazy." "Maybe, but I'm not going to let them take our home." He ran from the house while Martha fired at any alien that came close. The truck was in the driveway. The keys were still in it. John drove it to the shed and loaded bag after bag of ammonium nitrate fertilizer into the back. It was heavy work, but he did not stop. His back screamed in pain, but he did not care. Then he drove toward the largest group of craft he could find. They were gathered near the town square, hundreds of them. They were setting up some kind of equipment, maybe a command post, maybe something worse. John did not care what it was. He pressed the gas pedal to the floor. The old truck roared forward. The craft saw it coming. They tried to shoot at it, but their energy weapons had little effect on the thick metal body. John jumped out at the last moment. He rolled on the ground, feeling something break in his shoulder. But he did not stop. He crawled behind a wall and covered his head. The explosion was massive. The fertilizer bomb destroyed everything within 50 yards. The ground shook. Windows shattered all across town. A mushroom cloud of dirt and fire rose into the sky. When John looked up, there were no more craft in the town square. The news spread somehow. Maybe through old CB radios that still worked. Maybe through people driving from town to town. Maybe through some kind of miracle. But within hours, people all across the region knew what was happening in Cedar Falls. And they came to help. Pickup trucks filled with armed farmers came from the north. Hunters who knew these woods better than anyone came from the east. Veterans who had sworn they would never fight again came from the south. They all came to Cedar Falls. They came because they were angry. They came because they were scared. They came because this was their land too. If aliens could take Cedar Falls, they could take anywhere. And that was not going to happen. Mary Johnson was one of them. She was 45 years old. She ran a small diner in the next town over. She had never shot a gun in her life. But her father had been a Marine. He had taught her one thing before he died: never give up, never surrender. She brought her father's old service rifle and a truck full of supplies. Food, water, medical supplies. The people of Cedar Falls needed them all. "Where do you need me?" she asked John Miller. John looked at her. His shoulder was wrapped in bandages. His face was covered in dirt and blood, but his eyes were still burning with that same determination. "Can you shoot?" "Never tried." "Then you'll learn today." And she did. Within an hour, Mary Johnson had shot her first alien. Within 2 hours, she had shot 10 more. She was not a soldier. She was not a warrior. She was a diner owner from a small town. But today, she was something more. All across Cedar Falls, the same transformation was happening. Teachers became snipers. Mechanics became bomb makers. Nurses became field medics. Everyone found a way to fight. The craft were confused and angry. They had more soldiers. They had better weapons. They had ships that could destroy the entire town in seconds. But Vextor did not want to destroy the town. He wanted to conquer it. He wanted to show the humans that resistance was useless. But the more he tried to show them, the more they resisted. His soldiers were dying by the hundreds. The humans knew the land. They knew every hill, every tree, every building. They attacked from everywhere and nowhere. They set traps. They made bombs. They fought with a fury that Vextor had never seen. "Perhaps we should simply destroy this settlement," one of his officers suggested. Vextor turned his 3 red eyes on the officer. "No, if we destroy them, we show weakness. We show that we could not conquer a group of farmers. That cannot happen. We will crush this resistance. We will make an example of these humans." But the hours passed, and the resistance only grew stronger. By nightfall, the Krath had lost almost a third of their ground forces. The humans had lost people too. Good people. Brave people. Old Tom Walker was gone, killed while covering others who were escaping. Sarah Chen was badly wounded. Many houses were burned. Many families were grieving. But they had not surrendered. Not one person had surrendered. John Miller stood on what was left of his porch. His farm was mostly destroyed. The house was damaged. The barn was gone. The fields were ruined, but he was still standing. His wife was beside him. His son was alive. "They'll come back tomorrow," Tommy said, "with more soldiers, with more weapons." John nodded. "I know." "Can we win?" John was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the fires still burning across town. He looked at the alien ships still hovering in the sky. He looked at the stars above them. "I don't know, son. I really don't know, but I know one thing. We showed them today that we won't go down without a fight. We showed them that this land is ours, and we will keep showing them until we can't fight anymore." Martha put her hand on his arm. "The others are gathering at the school. They want to talk about what to do next." John nodded. He was tired, so tired, every part of his body hurt, but he could not rest, not yet. There was too much to do. They walked through the ruined streets of Cedar Falls. The town they had known their whole lives looked like a war zone now, because it was a war zone. They passed other people walking the same way, other farmers, other shopkeepers, other ordinary people who had become warriors in a single day. At the school, hundreds of people had gathered. More were arriving every minute. Some came from towns 50 miles away. They had heard about the fight and they had come to join it. John looked at them all. These were not soldiers, they were people like him, farmers, workers, parents, grandparents, but they had steel in their eyes, they had fire in their hearts. Maybe they could not win this war. Maybe the aliens would come back with overwhelming force and destroy them all, but they would fight. They would fight until they could not fight anymore. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Someone had to say something. Someone had to lead. John looked around and realized that everyone was looking at him. Him, an old farmer with a broken shoulder and dirt on his face. He stepped forward. His voice was tired but clear. "Today we lost a lot. We lost homes. We lost people we loved, but we did not lose our spirit. We did not lose our will to fight." The crowd was silent, listening. "Those things up there think we're going to give up. They think we're going to surrender because they have bigger ships and better weapons, but they don't understand something about humans." He looked at the faces around him. Young faces, old faces, scared faces, determined faces. "We don't give up, ever. This is our home, this is our land, and no one takes it from us without a fight." A cheer went up from the crowd. It was not a loud cheer. These were tired people who had been through a terrible day, but it was real. It was honest. It was the sound of people who had decided that they would rather die free than live as slaves. The night stretched on, plans were made, weapons were distributed, positions were chosen. No one slept. How could they sleep when alien ships still filled the sky? But they were ready. They were ready for whatever came next. And what came next would change everything. The second day began with fire from the sky. Vextor had lost patience. He ordered his ships to bombard the outskirts of Cedar Falls. Great beams of energy fell from above, burning everything they touched. The forests around the town exploded into flames. The roads leading in and out were destroyed. But the town itself remained untouched. Vextor still wanted to conquer it. He still wanted to prove that the Krath could not be defeated by farmers. More soldiers landed, fresh troops to replace the ones who had died. They came in greater numbers than before. They came with heavier weapons. They came with vehicles that floated above the ground and cannons that could destroy buildings with a single shot. The humans watched them come. They watched from their hiding places, from their barricades, from anywhere they could find cover, and they waited. John Miller was in what was left of his house. His shoulder had been treated by Mary Johnson, who had learned some first aid during the night. It still hurt. Everything still hurt. But he could hold his rifle. That was all that mattered. "There are so many of them," Tommy said quietly. "More than yesterday," John agreed. "But we know more now too. We know where they're weak. We know how to hurt them." Martha was loading shells into the shotgun. Her hands were steady. Her face was calm. She had accepted what might happen today. They all had. The Krath attacked at dawn. They came from all directions at once. Their floating vehicles led the way, their cannons blazing. Buildings exploded. Streets were torn apart. The sounds of battle filled the air. But the humans were ready. They had spent the night preparing traps, pits filled with sharpened stakes, wires strung across roads, bombs made from fuel and fertilizer buried under the streets. The Krath walked right into them. Vehicles fell into pits and could not get out. Soldiers tripped wires and were shot by hidden snipers. Bombs exploded under marching feet, sending aliens flying through the air. And all the time the humans kept shooting. From windows, from rooftops, from behind walls and cars and anything else they could find. The battle raged for hours. Neither side gave ground. The Krath pushed forward and were pushed back. The humans lost positions and then took them again. The town became a maze of fire and smoke and death. John Miller killed more aliens than he could count. His rifle grew hot in his hands. His ammunition ran low, but he kept fighting. Tommy was beside him, shooting with a calm precision that made John proud. Martha was there too, her shotgun booming again and again. They were a family at war. They were farmers who had become warriors. In the early afternoon, the first Krath vehicles were destroyed. Bill Henderson had figured out that their weak point was underneath, where the armor was thin. He had spent the night digging tunnels under the streets. When a vehicle passed over, someone would pop up and fire directly into its belly. It was dangerous work. Many people died doing it, but they destroyed vehicle after vehicle until the Krath stopped using them altogether. By evening, the battlefield looked like something from a nightmare. Alien bodies lay everywhere. Human bodies, too. Buildings burned. Streets were torn up. Smoke filled the sky so thick that the sun was just a red blur. But the humans still held the center of town. They still held the school where their wounded were treated. They still held their homes. Vextor watched from his ship. His rage was beyond description. He had lost more than half his ground forces now. His vehicles were destroyed. His soldiers were afraid to advance. Afraid of farmers, of primitives with their metal projectile weapons and their crude explosives. "This is not possible," he said to himself. "This cannot be happening." But it was happening. It was happening because he had made a mistake, the greatest mistake any conqueror can make. He had underestimated his enemy. On the third day, the tide began to turn. Not because the humans had more weapons or more soldiers, they had fewer of both. Their ammunition was running low. Their numbers were shrinking. Many were wounded. All were exhausted. But something else was happening, something Vextor had not expected. More humans were coming. They came from everywhere. They came in trucks and cars and on foot. They came from cities and towns across the region. They had seen the smoke. They had heard the stories, and they had come to fight. Some were veterans who still remembered how to hold a rifle. Some were young people who had never fought anything in their lives. Some were old men and women who should have been resting in their homes. They all came to Cedar Falls. By the third morning, the defenders numbered in the thousands, and more were on the way. The news had spread across the entire country now. Every television, every radio, every phone carried the story. A small farming town was fighting alien invaders. A small farming town was winning. The military was coming too, but they were far away. It would take time to mobilize, time to plan, time to move forces into position. The people of Cedar Falls could not wait for the military. They had to fight with what they had. But what they had was growing every hour. John Miller looked at the new arrivals with tears in his eyes. He was beyond exhausted now. He had barely slept in 3 days. His shoulder was infected. His hands shook when he tried to hold his rifle. But seeing all these people gave him strength. "Who are you?" he asked a young man who had just arrived with a group of others. "I'm from Seattle," the young man said. "I drove all night to get here." "Why?" The young man looked at John like he was asking the strangest question in the world. "Because you're fighting. Because someone had to do something. Because this is our country and no aliens are going to take it." Similar conversations were happening all around the town. People who had never met before were standing side by side. People from different cities, different backgrounds, different lives, united by a common cause. The Krath attacked again, but this time they were met by a wall of fire. Thousands of humans shooting from every direction. The aliens fell by the hundreds. Vextor watched in growing horror. His invasion force was being destroyed. His soldiers were dying. And still the humans came, more and more of them, pouring into the area like water into a sink. He finally understood his mistake. He had thought he was conquering a small town. He had thought the resistance would be limited to a few hundred farmers. He had not understood that humans were connected, that when you attacked one group of them, all of them fought back. These creatures did not think like the other species he had conquered. They did not surrender when faced with superior force. They did not calculate their odds of survival and make logical decisions. They fought. They fought even when it was hopeless. They fought because fighting was in their nature. And now they were fighting with everything they had. The military arrived at noon on the third day. First came the helicopters, their guns blazing at the alien positions. Then came the tanks, rolling down the roads that had been cleared of debris. Then came the soldiers, thousands of them, spreading out to reinforce the civilian defenders. For the first time since the invasion began, the humans had real military power, real weapons, real organization. The Krath fell back. Vextor watched his forces retreat and knew that he had lost, not just this battle, everything, his career, his honor, his entire understanding of how conquest worked. He had one option left. He could order his ships to destroy the entire area, to burn everything to ash, but even that would not be a victory. It would be an admission of defeat, an admission that the mighty Krath had been beaten by farmers. He could not bear that shame. "Withdraw," he ordered. "All forces return to the ships." His officers stared at him in shock. "Commander, we are leaving this place. We are leaving this planet." "But the conquest." "The conquest is over. We have lost." The alien ships rose into the sky. They lifted off from the ruined fields, leaving behind the bodies of thousands of their soldiers. They climbed higher and higher until they were just black dots against the blue sky. Then they were gone. The people of Cedar Falls watched them go. They watched in silence. They were too tired to cheer, too tired to celebrate, too tired to do anything except stand and breathe and know that they were alive. John Miller leaned against the wall of his ruined house. His rifle fell from his hands. He had no strength left to hold it. Martha came to stand beside him. She put her arm around his waist and held him up. "We won," she said softly. John looked at his destroyed farm, the fields he had worked for 40 years, the barn where he had taught his children to ride horses, the house where he had raised his family, all of it ruined. But they were alive, his wife was alive, his son was alive, the town still stood, broken but standing. And the aliens were gone. "Yeah," he said, "we won." Tommy came walking up, his rifle over his shoulder. He looked at his parents and something like a smile crossed his tired face. They had done the impossible. They had fought an alien army and won. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. The world had changed in those 3 days. The world had learned that it was not alone in the universe, that there were others out there, others who wanted to conquer and enslave. But the world had also learned something about itself. It had learned that humans could fight, that ordinary people could become warriors when their homes were threatened, that farmers with hunting rifles could defeat an alien army. Cedar Falls became famous. People came from all over the world to see the little town that had stopped an invasion. They saw the ruined buildings and the burned fields. They saw the cemetery that had grown so large during the fighting. They saw the people who had fought and survived. John Miller did not want to be famous. He did not want the interviews and the cameras and the people who wanted to shake his hand. He just wanted to rebuild his farm. He just wanted to plant his crops and watch them grow. But he gave the interviews anyway. He shook the hands. He told the story again and again because people needed to hear it. They needed to know that ordinary people could do extraordinary things. "How did you do it?" the reporters always asked. "How did farmers defeat an alien army?" John always gave the same answer. "We didn't do anything special. We just fought for what was ours. We fought for our homes and our families and our land. That's what humans do. That's what we've always done." His farm was rebuilt with help from thousands of volunteers. People came from everywhere to lend their hands. They cleared the fields and repaired the house and built a new barn. They did it because John Miller had shown them something. He had shown them that one person, one ordinary person, could make a difference. Martha watched the new barn go up and smiled. It was bigger than the old one. It was better, and it stood on land that was still theirs, land that no alien would ever take. Tommy decided to stay on the farm. He had offers from everywhere. The military wanted him. Security companies wanted him. But he chose to stay in Cedar Falls, to work the land beside his father, to raise his own family in the place where he was born. "Are you sure?" John asked him. "You could go anywhere now, do anything." Tommy looked at the fields that were being replanted. He looked at the people working side by side. He looked at the sky where the alien ships had once blocked out the sun. "There's no place I'd rather be, Dad. This is home." Mary Johnson went back to her diner, but she was different now. She had learned things about herself during those 3 days. She had learned that she was stronger than she ever knew. She visited Cedar Falls often, helping with the rebuilding, becoming part of the community that had formed during the battle. Bill Henderson became something of a local hero for figuring out how to destroy the alien vehicles. He did not like the attention. He just wanted to raise his pigs in peace, but he accepted it with grace, knowing that the story of their fight needed to be told. Months passed. The wheat grew tall in the fields again. The corn reached toward the sky. Life in Cedar Falls returned to something like normal. But nothing was really normal anymore. The world knew about the aliens now. The world knew that they could come back. Other ships were out there, somewhere in the darkness of space. Other armies, other invaders. Preparations were made. Weapons were developed. Plans were created. Humanity was no longer a species that looked only at its own planet. Now it looked at the stars and wondered what was out there. But in Cedar Falls, life went on as it always had. Farmers farmed. Shopkeepers ran their shops. Children went to school and learned their lessons. And every evening, John Miller sat on his new porch with his wife Martha and watched the sun go down over his fields. "Do you think they'll come back?" Martha asked one night. John thought about it. He thought about Vextor and his army. He thought about all the Krath soldiers who had died in his fields. He thought about the look he imagined on the alien commander's face when he finally understood that he had lost. Maybe, he said, probably, but it won't matter. Why not? John smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real. Because now they know what humans are, they know what we can do, and they know that no matter how many ships they bring, no matter how many soldiers they send, we will fight. We will always fight. Martha nodded. She understood. She had always understood. We're farmers, she said. That's what farmers do. We protect our land. That's right, John said. That's what we do. The sun set over Cedar Falls. The stars came out one by one. Somewhere up there in the darkness between the stars, the Krath were telling stories. They were telling their children about the little planet called Earth. The planet where farmers became warriors in a single day. The planet that could not be conquered. And somewhere in the galaxy, other species heard those stories too. They heard about the humans who fought against impossible odds, who never surrendered, who turned their farming tools into weapons and their homes into fortresses. They heard and they understood. Earth was not a planet to be conquered. It was a planet to be feared. It was a planet to be respected. John Miller did not know any of this. He did not know that his name was being spoken in languages he could never understand, on worlds he would never see. He did not know that he had become a legend. All he knew was that his crops were growing, his family was safe, his land was his own. And that was enough, that was everything. The story of Cedar Falls was passed down through generations. Parents told their children, who told their children, who told theirs. It became part of humanity's history, part of its identity. And whenever anyone asked how humans had stopped the first alien invasion, the answer was always the same. Farmers, ordinary farmers who refused to give up their land, who picked up their hunting rifles and stood against the darkness, who showed the universe that humanity would never surrender. Never surrender, never give up. Fight for your home, fight for your family, fight for your land. That was the lesson of Cedar Falls. That was the legacy of John Miller and Martha Miller and Tommy Miller and all the others who had fought. That was what it meant to be human. And somewhere out there, among the stars, the Krath remembered. They remembered the day they landed on a small farming planet, the day they met farmers who became warriors in a single day. They remembered, and they never came back.